The Los Zetas cartel thought they'd found an easy mark. A blind veteran making his way through a quiet neighborhood in San Antonio. Their target had served in Marine Force Recon before losing his sight to a bombing in Fallujah, now walking alone, with just his guide dog. It should have been a simple snatch and grab operation, but in the world of combat veterans, appearances can be fatally deceiving. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Michael Torres felt the subtle change in Shadow's movement. Beside him, the German shepherd's muscles tensing almost imperceptibly beneath the guide dog harness. Most handlers would have missed it, but Torres had worked with military canines long before losing his sight. He knew exactly what Shadow's body language meant they were being watched. Continuing his measured pace down the quiet street, Torres mapped his surroundings through sound and memory. The crunch of tires on asphalt 50 yards back, a vehicle moving too slowly for this residential area. Multiple footsteps trying too hard to be quiet. The subtle clicks of weapons being checked, amateur mistakes that brought him back to his days training new recruits in close-quarters combat. "Easy, boy," Torres whispered to Shadow, feeling the dog's controlled alertness through the harness. The German shepherd maintained his guide dog comportment perfectly while scanning their surroundings. Few would guess this was the same dog that had served 3 combat tours, earned 2 Purple Hearts, and held the record for most confirmed enemy combatant takedowns in his unit. The cartel surveillance team watched their target through high-powered optics, noting his careful movements, the simple white cane, the apparent vulnerability. "Este va a ser fácil," the team leader muttered into his radio. This was going to be easy. The blind Marine was just what they needed. Leverage against his brother Miguel Torres, the DEA agent who'd been disrupting their operations across South Texas. They didn't know that Michael Torres had never stopped being a warrior, that losing his sight had only made his other senses sharper, his tactical mind more focused. They saw the white cane and guide dog harness, not recognizing military-grade equipment disguised as civilian assistance devices. They watched him walking, alone, not realizing he was actively gathering intelligence on their surveillance patterns. Contact rear, multiple hostiles. Torres sub-vocalized into the miniature comms unit hidden in his collar, appearing to adjust his shirt. In the DEA command center 5 miles away, his brother Miguel leaned forward as the surveillance feeds activated. "Confirm, brother. We have eyes on 4 vehicles, heavily armed teams. Looks like Los Zetas." Torres kept walking, mind already gaming out scenarios. The cartel had been getting desperate lately, losing shipments and safe houses to DEA raids. Taking him would be their attempt to force Miguel to back off. They thought grabbing a blind veteran would be simple. Their first mistake, believing he was helpless, would be their last. Shadow's subtle shift in balance told Torres the nearest vehicle was making its move. The German shepherd's training showed in how he maintained his guide dog role while tracking multiple threats. This wasn't the first time they'd played this game. During their last deployment together, before the bombing that took Torres' sight, they'd specialized in letting the enemy think they had the upper hand. "Remember, boy?" Torres whispered, his words meant for both Shadow and the DEA teams listening in, "just like Fallujah." The dog's ears twitched at the code word, combat instincts engaging beneath his calm exterior. In the command center, Miguel Torres began mobilizing response teams. He knew his brother's capabilities, had helped design this operation. But even he worried. The cartel was getting reckless, prone to violence when cornered. The first vehicle accelerated, cutting off Torres. Path ahead. Doors slammed as armed men emerged, others approaching from behind. "Don't move, senor," a voice commanded in heavily accented English. "We only want to talk." Torres stopped, head tilted as though confused, while his trained senses mapped each opponent's position through their sounds and movements. Shadow stood perfectly still, every muscle coiled and ready. "I don't want any trouble," Torres said, playing up his disability. "Please, my dog is just a guide dog." The cartel men moved closer, weapons ready but held casual. They weren't expecting resistance. Their leader stepped forward, reaching for Torres's arm. "You will come with us. Your brother needs to learn some lessons about respect." Torres allowed himself a small smile. "Funny thing about respect," he said quietly. "In the Marines we learned it's earned through action, not fear." His next words were barely a whisper. "Shadow, we've got work to do." The German Shepherd's transformation from guide dog to combat K9 was explosive. Before the cartel leader could blink, Shadow had his weapon arm in a crushing bite, taking him down with military precision. Torres moved with practiced efficiency, his white cane extending into a tactical baton as he engaged the nearest threats. Years of close-quarters combat training took over, his other senses painting a perfect picture of the battle space. "Federal agents!" Voices shouted as DEA teams emerged from concealed positions, but Torres and Shadow were already controlling the situation. The cartel men found themselves facing not a helpless blind man, but a highly trained Force Recon Marine whose other senses had become lethal weapons. Every movement was precise, years of adapting to blindness making Torres more dangerous in close combat, not less. "Clear!" Miguel called as the last cartel member was secured. He approached his brother, who stood calmly with Shadow back in guide dog pose beside him. "You okay, Mike?" Torres nodded, face breaking into a grin. "They never learn, do they? Keep underestimating what we can do." Shadow leaned against his handler's leg, combat focus transitioning smoothly back to guide dog mode. To observers, he once again appeared to be simply a service animal, his tactical vest and specialized equipment concealed within the guide dog harness. Only the cartel men being loaded into custody vans knew differently, and they wouldn't soon. Forget the lesson about judging capability by appearance. In the aftermath, Torres knelt beside Shadow, checking him over with practiced hands. "Good boy," he whispered, feeling the dog's steady calm. "You haven't lost a step." His brother watched them, remembering how they'd developed this operation. After Michael lost his sight, everyone had thought Torres' combat days were over after Fallujah. Instead, he'd turned his disability into an asset, becoming more lethal by learning to fight without sight. The cartel's surveillance photos showed what they expected to see, a blind veteran dependent on his guide dog. They missed the modified tactical gear disguised as adaptive equipment, the combat-trained K9 playing the role of service animal, the warrior who had learned to turn darkness into advantage. Their assumption that disability meant weakness had led them into a perfectly executed trap. As federal teams processed the scene, Torres and Shadow resumed their walk, maintaining their cover for any watching eyes. To passers-by, they were simply a blind veteran and his guide dog. But the Los Zetas cartel had learned what others would soon discover. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones hiding in plain sight, and underestimating a warrior because of disability is often the last mistake an enemy makes. The DEA command center buzzed with activity as surveillance footage played across multiple screens. Miguel Torres watched his brother and Shadow stroll casually down the street. No sign of the intense combat moments earlier visible in their relaxed demeanor. "Your brother's something else," Deputy Director Sarah Chen remarked, studying the tactical readouts. Los Zetas just lost some of their best operators to a man they thought couldn't fight back. But Miguel's expression remained troubled. "They won't let this go," he said, eyes fixed on the cartel members being processed. "Los Zetas doesn't handle humiliation well." He recognized one of the captured men, Marco Ramirez, nephew of the cartel's second-in-command. This wasn't over. It was about to get much worse. Across town, Michael Torres and Shadow entered their modest home, a seemingly normal suburban residence that hid sophisticated security systems. The German shepherd's posture shifted subtly as they crossed the threshold, completing his standard security sweep while maintaining his guide dog appearance. Torres moved through the space with practiced ease, his trained senses building a perfect picture of his environment. "Command switching to secure comms," Torres subvocalized, activating the hidden system in his home office. "Shadow, duty shift." The dog's guide harness came off, revealing the advanced tactical vest underneath. Some saw darkness as a weakness. Torres had learned to make it his armor. The office walls held no photos, no decorations. Instead, carefully textured surfaces created a tactical map Torres could read by touch. His fingers moved across the raised patterns, tracking cartel movements the same way he'd once studied topographical maps. The bombing that took his sight hadn't diminished his strategic mind. It had forced him to evolve it. Preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Multiple vehicles approaching. Shadow's subtle change in posture telegraphed. Torres accessed his security feeds through an audio interface, listening to movement patterns. 3 SUVs, professional spacing, not law enforcement. His fingers found his phone's emergency alert. "Miguel, we've got company." The cartel teams surrounded the house with practiced efficiency, but something felt wrong. Their point man studied the seemingly vulnerable target through his scope. No reinforced windows, no visible security, just a blind vet and his dog. Yet years of combat experience screamed warning. This was too easy. Inside, Torres moved with quiet purpose, Shadow at his perfect heel. Most saw a disabled veteran dependent on his guide dog. They missed the combat-hardened Marine who'd learned to turn blindness into tactical advantage, the canine warrior disguised as a service animal. Together, they'd adapted their battlefield skills into something uniquely lethal. "Remember Kandahar," Torres whispered to Shadow. The dog's ears pricked forward, recognizing the code phrase. In the dark tunnels of Afghanistan, they'd learned to fight without sight, using sound and instinct. Now those skills would serve them again. The cartels. First breach attempt triggered hidden sensors. Torres smiled grimly as his audio feed captured their confusion. They'd expected standard home security. Instead, they'd found systems designed by a warrior who'd learned to fight in perpetual darkness. Every approach angle was covered, every entry point rigged to turn their own movements against them. Control multiple hostiles, compromised by countermeasures, Torres reported calmly. Shadow's heightened senses tracked the chaos outside as cartel members stumbled into carefully planned traps. Los Zetas is about to learn why Force Recon Marines train to fight blind. The firefight erupted with precise violence. Cartel teams found themselves facing automated defenses that turned darkness into weapon. Every flash of their muzzles gave away positions to sensors that needed no light. And through it all moved a warrior who had mastered fighting without sight, guided by a dog whose combat skills were masked by a service animal vest. "Contact front!" Torres processed the sound instantly, years of training translating audio into tactical data. Shadow moved like liquid shadow, taking down a cartel operator with clinical efficiency. Together they flowed through the darkness, handler and dog operating as one unit. What seemed like disability to their enemies had become their greatest weapon. Miguel's tactical team arrived to find the situation already controlled. 8 cartel operators zip-tied and secured, their weapons arranged with military precision. Michael Torres stood calmly in his living room, shadow alert beside him, both appearing unfazed by the combat debris around them. "Nice response time," Torres commented to his brother, face breaking into a grin. "Though Shadow and I had it handled." The German shepherd's tail wagged once, combat focus seamlessly transitioning back to his guide dog persona. To observers, he once again appeared to be simply a service animal. Only the subdued cartel operators knew differently. "This is escalating," Miguel said, surveying the scene. "Los Zetas sent their direct action team. They're not trying to send messages anymore." Torres nodded, his tactical mind already processing implications. "They think taking out a blind vet will restore their reputation. Time to show them how wrong they are." In the aftermath, Torres knelt beside Shadow, checking him with practiced hands. The dog leaned into his touch, their bond forged through countless battles. "They still don't understand, do they, boy?" he whispered. "They see darkness as weakness, never realizing it's our greatest strength." The DEA command center hummed with activity as analysts processed the scene. Deputy Director Chen studied the tactical readouts with growing respect. "Your brother's turned his disability into a tactical advantage," she told Miguel. "Los Zetas keeps expecting vulnerability and finding lethal capability instead." Torres and Shadow retired to the secure room, maintaining readiness. To the outside world, they appeared to be resting, a blind veteran and his guide dog recovering from trauma. In reality, they were preparing. Years of combat experience told them the cartel would escalate further. Their assumption of weakness had been crushed twice now. Their next move would come from pure rage. "They'll study the footage, analyze their failures," Torres told his brother during the debrief. "But they'll miss the most important lesson." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" Torres smiled, hand resting on Shadow's head. "That sometimes the deadliest warriors are the ones everyone underestimates. Disability didn't weaken me. It forced me to become stronger in ways they'll never understand." The cartel surveillance photos captured what they expected, a blind veteran relying on his guide dog. They missed the modified tactical systems designed to fight without light, the combat-trained K9 whose service animal appearance masked lethal capability, the warrior who had turned darkness into his most powerful ally. Their belief that disability meant weakness had led them into another perfectly executed trap. As night fell, Torres and Shadow maintained their vigilance. To neighbors, they were simply a disabled veteran and his service animal. But Los Zetas had learned what others would soon discover. Sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones hiding in plain sight, and assuming disability equals vulnerability is often an enemy's final mistake. In the quiet hours, Torres reflected on his journey. The bombing that took his sight could have ended his fighting days. Instead, it had forced him to evolve, to develop skills that made him more lethal, not less. Shadow pressed against his leg, their bond deeper than handler and dog. They had adapted together, turning perceived weakness into unbeatable strength. The cartel would come again, driven by rage and humiliation. They would come with greater numbers, with more firepower, believing that overwhelming force could overcome tactical advantage. They didn't understand that Torres and Shadow had already won the most important battle, the one that turned disability into deadly advantage. As Shadow maintained his alert watch, Torres smiled in the darkness. Let them come. They would learn what others had discovered too late, that sometimes the most dangerous warrior is the one everyone underestimates, and that disability doesn't end the fight. It just teaches you to fight smarter, harder, and with weapons your enemies never see coming. The night deepened, but Torres and Shadow remained ready, because in this ongoing battle, darkness wasn't their weakness. It was their greatest ally. And soon, Los Zetas would learn the true cost of mistaking adaptation for vulnerability and disability for defeat. In Mexico City's opulent Polanco district, Xavier Ramirez slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. Surveillance footage of his nephews. Capture played on repeat. "Un ciego?" he snarled. "A blind man and his dog humiliated our best operators?" The Los Zetas lieutenant's rage filled the luxurious office. This wasn't just about his nephew anymore. This was about cartel reputation. "Senor, there's more." His intelligence officer spoke carefully. "The veteran, Michael Torres. We've uncovered his military records." Scattered files spread across the desk. Force Recon Marine, specialized in advanced close-quarters combat. Before losing his sight, he trained other operators in fighting blind. Ramirez studied the documents, his tactical mind processing implications. And the dog. The intelligence officer pulled up more files. Shadow, 3 combat tours, highest confirmed takedown record in Marine K9 history. After Torres was blinded, they pioneered new techniques for disabled veterans and military dogs. "Oh, so we underestimated them." Ramirez's voice turned cold. "We saw disability and assumed weakness. Time to correct that error." He turned to his commander. "Bring me the phantasmas." Back in San Antonio, Michael Torres sat in his backyard, listening to Shadow's subtle movements as the German Shepherd patrolled their perimeter. Mo saw a disabled veteran enjoying quiet moments with his guide dog. Torres was actually processing combat intelligence through a sophisticated audio interface disguised as hearing aids. "Los Zetas is mobilizing resources," Miguel's voice came through the secure channel. "Major movements across the border. They're bringing in their ghost teams." Torres nodded slightly. The Phantasmas, cartel death squads composed of former Special Forces operators. This was about to get seriously professional. Shadow's ears pricked forward, catching distant sounds before any human could detect them. The dog's body language spoke volumes to Torres, their years of combat partnership creating communication beyond words. "I hear it too, boy," he whispered. "They're already here, aren't they?" The ghost teams had indeed arrived, establishing surveillance positions with military precision. Their commander, a former Mexican Special Forces operator codenamed Espectro, watched the target through high-powered optics. "Subject appears to be meditating in his backyard," he reported, guard dog maintaining standard patrol patterns. But something bothered the veteran operator. His years of combat experience screamed warning. The blind veteran's posture was too relaxed, too confident. The dog's movements, while appearing routine, covered ground with tactical efficiency. This wasn't civilian behavior. This was a combat veteran maintaining tactical awareness. In the DEA command center, Miguel Torres monitored the situation. "Multiple ghost teams confirmed," he reported to his brother. "They're using Mexican Special Forces protocols. These aren't cartel thugs anymore." "Good." Michael's response carried quiet confidence. "Time to show them what real special operations training looks like." His fingers traced the tactical map embedded in his chair's armrest. Mind-building. Perfect pictures from texture and sound. "Shadow, we've got some teaching to do." The German Shepherd's patrol pattern shifted subtly, combat instincts engaging beneath his guide dog appearance. Together, they had developed techniques that turned blindness into tactical advantage. Where others saw disability, they had created new ways of fighting. The ghost team's first probe came at dusk, a masterfully executed infiltration attempt that would have surprised most targets. But Torres had learned to fight in perpetual darkness. His other senses evolved beyond normal human capability. Shadow's heightened awareness combined with his handler's adapted combat skills created a defensive network that turned darkness into weapon. "Contact rear!" Torres processed the sound instantly, years of training translating audio into tactical data. Shadow moved like liquid shadow, intercepting the ghost team's point man with silent efficiency. The cartel operators found themselves facing a defensive system designed by warriors who had mastered fighting without sight. The firefight erupted with precise violence. Ghost teams discovered their night fighting advantage negated by opponents who lived in darkness. Every sound, every movement became tactical intelligence for Torres and Shadow. What seemed like disability to their enemies had become their greatest weapon. Multiple targets neutralized. Torres reported calmly through his secure comms. Shadow's got 2 more corralled in the East Garden. The German Shepherd's military training showed in his perfect control, herding armed operators like sheep while maintaining his guide dog appearance. Espectro watched in growing frustration as his teams were systematically dismantled. The blind veteran moved with impossible precision, anticipating attacks before they developed. The seemingly harmless guide dog transformed into a combat machine, his service animal vest concealing lethal capability. DEA tactical teams arrived to find Torres calmly sitting in his chair, Shadow alert beside him. 6 ghost team operators lay secured nearby, their weapons neatly arranged. "Nice of you to join us," Torres grinned at his brother. "Shadow and I were just explaining to these gentlemen why assuming disability means weakness is tactically unsound." Miguel surveyed the scene with professional pride. His brother had turned what others saw as limitation into unbeatable advantage. The cartel's best operators had fallen to a blind veteran and his dog, their assumptions about disability proving fatal. "You want to explain to the deputy director how you took down 6 ghost team operators without backup?" Miguel asked. Torres smiled, hand resting on Shadow's head. "Simple. They expected a blind man to be helpless. They didn't realize that fighting without sight isn't disability when you've mastered it as an art form." In his Mexico City office, Ramirez received the operation reports with cold fury. His ghost teams, elite operators who had never failed, demolished by a blind veteran and his guide dog, but something in the tactical data caught his attention. His military experience recognized the patterns. "He's not just fighting blind," Ramirez told his commanders. "He's using his blindness as tactical advantage. Every technique, every movement, he's turned darkness into his weapon." A dangerous smile crossed his face. "So we stop trying to overcome his advantage. We change the battlefield entirely." Torres sensed the shift in cartel strategy during his next security sweep. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his suspicions. "They're adapting," he told Miguel during their secure briefing. "Next attack won't be direct. They're learning respect for what we can do." "That makes them more dangerous," Miguel warned. But Torres just smiled, fingers running over his tactical braille displays. "Good. Maybe now they're ready to learn the most important lesson." His brother raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "That disability doesn't make you weaker," Torres said quietly. Shadow pressed against his leg. "It forces you to become stronger in ways your enemies can't imagine. Every limitation becomes opportunity for evolution. Every weakness transforms into unexpected strength." The Ghost teams regrouped, studying combat footage with professional focus. They had expected to overcome a disability. Instead, they had encountered a warrior who had turned blindness into tactical supremacy. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't understand the fundamental truth. As night fell, Torres and Shadow maintained their vigilance. To observers, they appeared to be simply resting, a disabled veteran and his guide dog enjoying quiet evening moments. In reality, they were preparing for the next evolution of combat, because the most dangerous predator isn't the strongest or fastest. It's the one that adapts, evolves, and turns apparent weakness into unstoppable strength. The cartel would come again, with new tactics and greater respect. They would come understanding that disability hadn't weakened their target. It had forced him to become something more lethal than they could imagine. And in that growing realization lay the seeds of their ultimate defeat. Because Michael Torres and Shadow had learned the truth that would elude their enemies until too late, that sometimes the greatest strength comes from overcoming what others see as weakness, and that disability doesn't end the warrior's path. It just forces you to become a warrior that your enemies never expect, never understand, and therefore can never defeat. Deep in Los Zetas territory, Xavier Ramirez convened his war council. Elite operators from multiple cartels gathered, drawn by an unprecedented offer, double their usual rates to help take down one blind veteran. The mission's difficulty had turned it into a matter of cartel honor. "Our previous approaches failed because we fought him on his terms," Ramirez explained, tactical displays showing prior encounters. "We thought blindness was weakness. Instead, he's mastered fighting in darkness, so we changed the game entirely." Colonel Santiago, a former Colombian Special Forces commander, studied the combat footage. "His techniques are extraordinary. He's not compensating for blindness. He's weaponized it. Notice how he uses sound as tactical data, how the dog communicates through subtle signals." "Then we eliminate those advantages," a Mexican intelligence operative suggested. "Overwhelm his adapted senses. If he's mastered fighting in silence and darkness, we bring chaos and light." In San Antonio, Michael Torres sensed the changing patterns. Shadow's behavior confirmed his instincts during their morning security sweep. "They're pulling back," he told Miguel through secure comms. All their surveillance teams withdrawing simultaneously. That's not good, Miguel responded from the DEA command center. Los Zetas never retreats. They regroup and escalate. We're picking up chatter about major resources being moved, specialists brought in from other cartels. Torres moved through his house, fingers reading tactical data from disguised braille interfaces. Shadow maintained his guide dog appearance, while scanning for threats, their years of partnership creating seamless communication. They're learning, Torres noted, finally understanding that direct assault won't work. Makes them more dangerous, Miguel warned. When cartels start thinking strategically instead of emotionally, things get complicated. But Torres just smiled, hand resting on Shadow's tactical vest concealed beneath his service dog harness. Good. Time they learned that adapting goes both ways. Deputy Director Chen arrived for an emergency briefing, bringing concerning intelligence. Los Zetas is calling in markers, pulling resources from every major cartel. They're making this but more than one operation. It's become a test of cartel power versus federal authority. Torres absorbed this while Shadow swept the room, the dog's military training hidden behind perfect service animal behavior. They think making it bigger helps them, he said thoughtfully. They don't understand that scale doesn't matter when you're fighting the wrong battle. In his private moments, Torres reflected on his journey. After losing his sight, many thought his fighting days were over. Instead, he'd been forced to evolve, to develop entirely new ways of combat. Shadow had adapted with him, their military training transforming into something uniquely lethal. They see disability as a wall, he told his brother during training. Something that limits you, defines what you can't do. They don't understand that every wall is also a foundation. You can let it box you in, or you can build something new on it, something your enemies never expect. The cartel's new strategy revealed itself gradually. First came the sonic attacks, high-frequency emissions designed to overwhelm Torres's enhanced hearing. Then electromagnetic pulses targeting his adapted technology. They were systematically trying to strip away his compensatory advantages. But Torres and Shadow had prepared for this. Their countermeasures weren't just technological, they were fundamental adaptations built on years of evolution. That's their mistake, Torres explained during the tactical review. They think technology lets me overcome blindness. They don't understand that technology just enhances what we've already mastered. Shadow demonstrated this during the next attack, when cartel teams used sonic weapons to overwhelm Torres's hearing. The German shepherds seamlessly adjusted their combat communication. Their bond went beyond handler and dog. They had developed an entire language of subtle touches and movements. 6 targets neutralized, Torres reported calmly after the engagement. They tried to blind my hearing, so Shadow and I switched to tactile combat signals. They still don't understand. Every sense they try to overwhelm just forces us to adapt stronger. The DEA tactical teams arrived to find another perfectly executed defense. Cartel operators lay secured, their sophisticated, electronic warfare equipment rendered useless. Torres sat calmly in his chair, Shadow alert beside him, both appearing unfazed by the technical assault. "Your brother's something else," Deputy Director Chen told Miguel. "Every time they try to exploit his disability, he turns it into a new kind of strength. It's like watching tactical evolution in real time." In his Mexico City command center, Ramirez reviewed the latest failure with growing respect. "He's not just fighting without sight," he told his war council. "He's created entirely new ways of combat. Every limitation we try to exploit becomes a different kind of advantage. Colonel Santiago nodded thoughtfully. In Special Forces, we learned that the most dangerous opponent isn't the strongest. It's the one who adapts fastest. This blind veteran and his dog, they're not just adapting, they're evolving beyond our ability to predict. Torres sensed the shift in cartel tactics during their next patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. They were changing approaches again, learning from each failure. Good, he told the dog quietly. Maybe now they're ready for the real lesson. Which is? Miguel asked during their secure briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over his tactical displays. That disability doesn't just force you to adapt, it forces you to innovate. Every limitation becomes an opportunity to develop something new, something your enemies can't understand because they've never had to evolve that way. The cartel forces regrouped, studying combat footage with newfound respect. They had tried to exploit a disability, only to find themselves facing combat evolution they couldn't predict. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. As evening approached, Torres and Shadow maintained their vigilance. To observers, they appeared to be simply resting, a disabled veteran and his guide. Dog enjoying quiet moments. In reality, they were preparing for the next phase of tactical evolution, because the most dangerous warrior isn't the one with the most advantages. It's the one who turns every disadvantage into unexpected strength. The cartels would come again, with new strategies and greater understanding. They would come having learned that disability hadn't weakened their target. It had forced him to become something more formidable than they could imagine. And in that growing realization lay the seeds of their ultimate defeat. Because Michael Torres and Shadow had mastered the truth that would elude their enemies until too late, that true strength isn't about overcoming limitations, but about transforming them into capabilities your opponents can never expect. Each attempt to exploit his disability just gave him new ways to prove that the most powerful warriors aren't those who never face limitations, but those who learn to turn every limitation into lethal advantage. The cartel's next evolution of tactics began not with violence, but with silence. Xavier Ramirez had assembled a unique team, psychological warfare experts, former intelligence operatives, specialists in breaking the unbreakable. Their mission wasn't to attack Torres directly, but to understand and deconstruct the source of his strength. Your disability isn't your weakness, Colonel Santiago explained to his strike teams. It's the foundation of your opponent's evolution. To defeat him, we must first understand how he transformed limitation into power. The former Special Forces commander had spent weeks analyzing Torres's combat footage, studying how blindness had forced the creation of entirely new fighting techniques. In San Antonio, Michael Torres felt the change immediately. Shadow's behavior signaled the shift during their morning route. The usual surveillance teams had vanished, replaced by something more subtle. They're learning, he told his brother, through secure comms, finally starting to ask the right questions. How can you tell? Miguel asked from the DEA command center. Torres smiled, fingers reading tactical data from his modified equipment. Because they've stopped trying to exploit my blindness. Now they're trying to understand how it made me stronger. The cartel's new approach revealed itself through careful probes. They tested Torres' adapted combat systems not to overcome them, but to analyze how disability had forced their evolution. Each encounter became less about victory and more about understanding transformation. "Fascinating," Colonel Santiago remarked, reviewing data from their latest engagement. "He doesn't just compensate for blindness. He uses it as catalyst for innovation. Every limitation becomes opportunity for developing capabilities beyond normal human range." Shadow demonstrated this during an afternoon security sweep. The German Shepherd's service animal behavior masked perfectly tuned combat. Awareness, their partnership evolving beyond handler and dog into synchronized tactical unit. Where others saw disability requiring assistance, they had created seamless integration of human and canine capabilities. "Most people think service dogs just help disabled veterans cope," Torres explained during a training session. "They don't understand that necessity breeds evolution. Shadow and I aren't compensating for limitation. We're developing entirely new ways of operating." The Cartel's psychological warfare experts noted this philosophy with growing interest. "He's transcended traditional combat paradigms," one analyst reported. "Blindness forced him to abandon conventional tactics, creating fighting methods that exist beyond normal sensory limitations." Deputy Director Chen witnessed this evolution firsthand during a surprise attack. Cartel teams attempted to overwhelm Torres's adapted senses with sophisticated countermeasures. Instead, they found themselves facing combat capabilities that operated on entirely different principles. "Remarkable," Chen observed afterward. "They tried to exploit his disability by attacking his compensatory methods, but his real strength isn't in compensation, it's in complete tactical transformation. He doesn't fight despite blindness. He fights through it, using it as gateway to enhanced capability." Torres and Shadow's response to the attack demonstrated this perfectly. When Cartel operators deployed sensory disruption devices, the veteran and his dog shifted seamlessly to fighting methods that transcended normal human limitations. Their disability-driven evolution had created combat techniques that existed beyond traditional tactical frameworks. 6 hostiles neutralized, Torres reported calmly. "They're still thinking in terms of overcoming limitation. They don't understand that true adaptation isn't about compensating for what you've lost. It's about discovering capabilities you never knew were possible." Colonel Santiago recognized this truth while reviewing the engagement. "In Special Forces, we train to fight through any condition," he told his teams. "But this blind veteran and his dog, they're not just fighting through limitation, they're using it as catalyst to evolve beyond normal combat parameters." The Cartel's next innovation came through psychological operations. Instead of attacking Torres directly, they began targeting his support network, trying to understand how disability had influenced his entire tactical ecosystem. "Interesting approach," Torres noted during a secure briefing. "They're finally realizing that disability doesn't just change how you fight, it transforms your entire operational philosophy. Every limitation forces you to rethink basic assumptions about capability." Shadow's behavior confirmed this analysis during their evening patrol. The German Shepherd's reactions showed how their partnership had evolved beyond traditional military canine protocols, creating something uniquely adapted to their specific challenges. "Most handlers train dogs to assist with disability," Torres explained to his brother. Shadow and I learned to use disability as foundation for developing capabilities beyond normal military partnerships. Every limitation became opportunity to innovate beyond standard protocols. In his Mexico City command center, Ramirez studied this evolution with growing respect. "We've been fighting the wrong battle," he told his war council. "We saw disability as vulnerability to exploit. Instead, it's the source of combat evolution we can't predict or counter." The cartel's next phase revealed this new understanding. Instead of trying to overcome Torres' adapted capabilities, they began studying how disability had driven their development. Each engagement became less about victory and more about comprehending transformation. "They're learning," Torres told Deputy Director Chen during a tactical review, "finally understanding that disability isn't something you overcome. It's something that forces you to evolve beyond normal human limitations. Every wall becomes foundation for building something new." Shadow demonstrated this truth during their next confrontation. When cartel teams deployed advanced electronic warfare systems, the dog's military training transcended normal K9 capabilities. Their disability-driven evolution had created tactical responses that operated beyond traditional combat frameworks. "Your brother's rewriting our understanding of adaptive combat," Chen told Miguel. "Every time they try to exploit his disability, he demonstrates how limitation forces innovation beyond normal tactical boundaries. It's like watching the future of warfare evolution." Torres sensed this shift in cartel strategy during their morning routine. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. They were moving beyond simple tactical adaptation into deeper understanding of how disability drives combat evolution. "Good," he told the dog quietly. "Maybe now they're ready to learn the most important lesson." The German shepherd's ears pricked forward. Their years of partnership creating communication beyond normal handler-dog relationships. "Which is?" Miguel asked during their secure briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over his tactical displays. "That disability doesn't just force you to adapt, it forces you to transcend. Every limitation becomes catalyst for developing capabilities beyond what normal training could produce." The cartel forces regrouped, studying combat footage with newfound insight. They had tried to exploit a disability, only to find themselves facing tactical evolution they couldn't predict or counter. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. Because Michael Torres and Shadow had mastered the principle that would elude their enemies until too late. The true combat evolution isn't about overcoming limitations, but about using them as foundation for developing capabilities beyond normal human boundaries. Each attempt to exploit his disability just gave him new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful warriors aren't those who never face limitations, but those who learn to use limitation as catalyst for transcending normal combat evolution. The evolution of the cartel's strategy took an unexpected turn when Xavier Ramirez discovered something intriguing in Torres' military records. Before losing his sight, the Marine had specialized in developing innovative combat techniques for operating in zero-visibility environments. His blindness hadn't crippled him. It had forced him to perfect methods he'd already been pioneering. "Look at these training documents," Colonel Santiago told his war council, spreading classified files across the table. Before the IED, he was already teaching Force Recon teams to fight without relying on sight. He wasn't just a combat instructor. He was revolutionizing how Marines operate in sensory-deprived conditions. In San Antonio, Torres sensed the subtle shift in Cartel surveillance patterns. Shadow's behavior during their morning patrol confirmed it. They weren't just studying his current capabilities, but researching his military background. They're digging deeper, he told Miguel through secure comms, finally asking how disability transformed existing skills instead of crippling them. The DEA command center buzzed with new intelligence. Cartel teams had been tracking down Torres' former students, studying how his pre-injury training methods had evolved into his current combat systems. They're not just trying to counter your techniques anymore, Deputy Director Chen observed. They're trying to understand your entire combat philosophy. Torres moved through his daily routine, each action demonstrating the truth his enemies were starting to grasp. Before losing his sight, he trained elite operators to fight through sensory deprivation. After his injury, he'd been forced to perfect those methods, turning theoretical training into lived combat evolution. Most people think disability erases your previous capabilities, he explained during a tactical review. They don't understand that it can also force you to fully develop skills you only partially mastered before. Every limitation becomes catalyst for perfecting techniques you might otherwise never have fully explored. Shadow's behavior exemplified this principle. The German Shepherd had been a conventional military canine before Torres' injury. Adapting to work with a blind handler had forced the dog to evolve beyond standard training, developing capabilities that transcended normal service animal or military working dog protocols. The cartel's next innovation came through studying this transformation. Instead of treating Torres' blindness as weakness to exploit, they began analyzing how it had catalyzed the evolution of his existing combat expertise. Each engagement became opportunity to understand how disability could drive tactical perfection. Remarkable adaptation, Colonel Santiago noted, reviewing footage of Torres and Shadow in action. His pre-injury training methods were already revolutionary. Losing his sight forced him to fully realize concepts he'd only theorized before. He's not just fighting through blindness, he's achieving combat evolution he'd been working toward all along. In the field, this new understanding manifested in increasingly sophisticated probes. Cartel teams tested Torres' capabilities not to overcome them, but to analyze how disability had driven their development beyond conventional military parameters. 6 targets neutralized, Torres reported after one encounter. They're finally starting to understand. Before losing my sight, I taught Marines to operate without visual reference. Now I've mastered those techniques in ways only total blindness could force. Every limitation became opportunity for perfect adaptation. Deputy Director Chen witnessed this evolution during a coordinated cartel assault. When electronic warfare systems targeted Torres' adapted technology, he and Shadow shifted seamlessly to fighting methods that transcended normal sensory dependencies. Their disability-driven evolution had perfected combat techniques that operated beyond traditional tactical frameworks. Your brother's journey is extraordinary, Chen told Miguel afterward. His pre-injury expertise in sensory-deprived combat created foundation for turning blindness into tactical advantage. He's not just overcoming disability, he's using it to achieve combat mastery he was already working toward. Torres sensed this growing comprehension during their evening security sweep. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. The cartel's approach had shifted from trying to exploit weakness to studying how disability had catalyzed tactical evolution. Most people see injury as end of combat capability, Torres explained to his brother. They don't understand that it can also be gateway to perfecting skills you could never fully develop otherwise. Every limitation forces you to master techniques that might have remained theoretical. In Mexico City, Ramirez studied this transformation with growing respect. "We've been looking at this wrong," he told his war council. His blindness didn't cripple his combat abilities. It forced him to fully realize fighting methods he was already pioneering. We're not facing disability, we're facing perfected adaptation. The cartel's next phase revealed this new understanding. Instead of trying to counter Torres's current capabilities, they began studying how his pre-injury expertise had evolved through disability into unprecedented combat mastery. Each engagement became less about victory and more about comprehending transformation. "They're learning," Torres told Chen during a tactical review, "finally understanding that disability doesn't just force adaptation, it can drive evolution beyond what normal training could achieve. Every limitation becomes opportunity to perfect capabilities you might never fully develop otherwise." Shadow demonstrated this truth during their next confrontation. When cartel teams deployed sophisticated countermeasures, the dog's military training transcended conventional parameters. Their disability-driven evolution had perfected tactical responses that operated beyond traditional combat frameworks. "Your brother's redefining our understanding of combat evolution," Chen remarked to Miguel. His pre-injury expertise created foundation for turning blindness into catalyst for tactical perfection. He's not just adapting to disability, he's using it to achieve mastery he was already working toward. Torres sensed this shift in cartel strategy during their morning patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. They were moving beyond simple tactical adaptation into deeper understanding of how disability drives combat evolution beyond normal parameters. "Good," he told the dog quietly. "Maybe now they're ready to learn the most important lesson." The German shepherd's ears pricked forward, their partnership demonstrating perfect integration of handler and canine capabilities. "Which is?" Miguel asked during their secure briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over his tactical displays. "That disability doesn't just force you to adapt. It can drive you to perfect capabilities you might never fully develop otherwise. Every limitation becomes catalyst for achieving mastery beyond what normal training could produce." The cartel forces regrouped, studying combat footage with newfound insight. They had tried to exploit a disability, only to find themselves facing tactical evolution they couldn't predict or counter. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. Because Michael Torres and Shadow had mastered the principle that would elude their enemies until too late, that true combat evolution isn't just about overcoming limitations, but about using them as catalyst for perfecting capabilities beyond normal parameters. Each attempt to exploit his disability just gave him new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful warriors aren't those who never face limitations, but those who learn to use limitation as gateway to achieving unprecedented tactical mastery. Xavier Ramirez's next tactical evolution emerged from an unexpected source, studying how other disabled veterans had transformed their limitations into unique capabilities. His intelligence teams discovered a pattern. Those who achieved the most extraordinary adaptations were the ones who stopped trying to compensate for disability and instead used it to pioneer entirely new methods. Torres isn't unique in his transformation, Colonel Santiago explained, sharing findings from his research. What makes him exceptional is how he turned his pre-existing expertise in sensory-deprived combat into foundation for unprecedented tactical evolution. He's part of a larger pattern we're seeing among veterans who transcend disability. In San Antonio, Torres detected this shift in cartel strategy during training with a group of newly disabled veterans. Shadow's behavior confirmed his analysis. Their observers were studying not just his techniques, but how he taught others to transform limitation into tactical advantage. Most rehabilitation focuses on overcoming disability, Torres explained. To his students, a mix of veterans learning to adapt to various injuries. We're going to approach it differently. Instead of fighting your limitations, you'll learn to use them as foundation for developing capabilities beyond what you had before. A former Army Ranger, now operating with prosthetic legs, demonstrated this principle during their morning exercises. His adapted movement patterns weren't just compensating for lost limbs, they had evolved into entirely new forms of tactical mobility that able-bodied operators couldn't replicate. Before losing my legs, I moved like every other soldier, the Ranger shared. Now I've developed techniques that give me advantages in certain situations. My prosthetics let me operate in ways organic limbs can't. What seemed like limitation became gateway to tactical innovation. The DEA Command Center tracked how this philosophy spread through the veteran community. Other disabled warriors began sharing how their injuries had forced development of unprecedented capabilities. A Marine sniper with one arm had perfect stability. Conventional shooters couldn't match. A partially paralyzed pilot's adapted control systems allowed maneuvers beyond normal aircraft parameters. Your brother's creating something bigger than combat techniques, Deputy Director Chen told Miguel. He's pioneering an entirely new understanding of how disability can drive tactical evolution beyond normal human capabilities. These veterans aren't just adapting, they're transcending conventional limitations. Shadow's role in this transformation became increasingly significant. The German Shepherd's work with Torres had evolved beyond both service animal and military canine protocols, creating new paradigms for human-canine tactical integration. Other disabled veterans began developing similarly enhanced partnerships with their service dogs. Most people see service dogs as assistants helping disabled veterans cope, Torres explained during a training session. We're demonstrating something different, how the unique demands of disability can force evolution of human canine capabilities beyond what conventional military training achieves. The cartel's next innovation came through studying this broader pattern of disability-driven tactical evolution. Instead of focusing solely on Torres, they began analyzing how other disabled veterans had transformed their limitations into unprecedented advantages. These warriors aren't just overcoming injuries, Colonel Santiago noted reviewing training footage. They're using disability as catalyst for developing capabilities that transcend normal human parameters. Each limitation becomes foundation for tactical innovation we never imagined possible. Torres sensed this growing comprehension during their evening security sweep. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. The cartel's approach had shifted. From trying to exploit weakness to studying how disability consistently drove development of enhanced capabilities. Most people see injury as end of combat effectiveness, Torres told his brother. They don't understand that it can also be beginning of tactical evolution beyond conventional parameters. Every limitation forces innovation that might never emerge through normal training. In Mexico City, Ramirez studied this pattern with newfound respect. "We've been approaching this wrong," he told his war council. "These disabled veterans aren't just adapting to injuries, they're using them as foundation for developing capabilities that transcend normal human limits. We're not facing compensation, we're facing evolution." The cartel's next phase revealed this understanding. Instead of trying to counter Torres's specific techniques, they began studying how different forms of disability consistently drove development of enhanced tactical capabilities. Each engagement became opportunity to comprehend this broader pattern of transformation. A breakthrough came during an attempted infiltration. When cartel teams deployed conventional tactics, they found themselves facing coordinated response from multiple disabled veterans, each using their unique adaptations to create unprecedented tactical advantages. 8 hostiles neutralized, Torres reported afterward. "They're finally starting to understand. We're not just compensating for disabilities, we're using them as catalyst for developing capabilities beyond normal parameters. Every limitation becomes opportunity for tactical innovation." Deputy Director Chen witnessed this evolution during a sophisticated cartel assault. When electronic warfare systems targeted adapted technology, the disabled veterans shifted seamlessly to enhanced capabilities that transcended normal operational parameters. Their disability-driven evolution had created tactical responses operating beyond conventional frameworks. "Your brother's impact goes beyond combat techniques," Chen told Miguel. "He's demonstrating how disability consistently drives development of capabilities exceeding normal human limits. These veterans aren't just adapting, they're achieving tactical evolution we never imagined possible." Torres sensed this shift in cartel strategy during their morning patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. They were moving beyond simple tactical adaptation into deeper understanding of how disability consistently catalyzes combat evolution. "Good," he told the dog quietly. "Maybe now they're ready to learn the most important lesson." The German Shepherd's ears pricked forward, their partnership demonstrating perfect integration of adapted capabilities. "Which is?" Miguel asked during their secure briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over his tactical displays. "That disability doesn't just force adaptation, it consistently drives development of capabilities exceeding normal human parameters. Every limitation becomes catalyst for tactical evolution, beyond what conventional training could produce." The cartel forces regrouped, studying combat footage with newfound insight. They had tried to exploit disabilities, only to find themselves facing tactical evolution they couldn't predict or counter. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the principle that would elude their enemies until too late. That true combat evolution isn't just about overcoming limitations, but about using them as foundation for developing capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Each attempt to exploit their disabilities just gave them new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful warriors aren't those who never face limitations, but those who learn to use limitation as catalyst for achieving unprecedented tactical evolution. The cartel's strategy underwent a radical shift when Xavier Ramirez discovered an emerging pattern in military research. Special Forces units worldwide had begun studying how disabled veterans' adaptations were revolutionizing combat tactics. What started with Torres was becoming a new frontier in warfare evolution. These innovations are redefining our understanding of human potential, Colonel Santiago explained to his tactical teams. Each disability forces development of capabilities we never knew were possible. We're not just witnessing adaptation, we're seeing the future of combat evolution. In San Antonio, Torres sensed this changing perspective during a joint training session with international Special Forces observers. Shadow's behavior confirmed his analysis. Military organizations were beginning to recognize disability as catalyst for unprecedented tactical development. Traditional combat training focuses on maximizing existing capabilities, Torres explained to the gathered operators. But when disability removes those options, it forces exploration of possibilities beyond conventional parameters. We're not overcoming limitations. We're using them to pioneer new frontiers in human performance. A British SAS team demonstrated this principle during integrated exercises. Their unit had incorporated techniques developed by disabled veterans, discovering that these adapted methods offered tactical advantages even for able-bodied operators. These innovations are changing how we approach special operations, the SAS commander shared. What began as disability adaptation has evolved into enhancement of human capability beyond normal limitations. Every adapted technique opens new possibilities we never considered. The DEA Command Center tracked how this philosophy was transforming military doctrine. Special Forces units began actively recruiting disabled veterans as trainers, recognizing their unique insights into transcending conventional human parameters. Your brother sparked something revolutionary, Deputy Director Chen told Miguel. Military organizations worldwide are realizing that disability-driven innovation consistently produces capabilities exceeding normal human limits. These adaptations are becoming foundation for next-generation combat evolution. Shadow's role in this transformation reached new significance. The German Shepherd's evolved partnership with Torres had created blueprints for enhancing human-canine tactical integration. Beyond traditional military or service animal protocols, most people see guide dogs as tools, helping disabled handlers, Torres explained during an international canine symposium. We're demonstrating something different. How disability forces evolution of human canine capabilities exceeding what conventional training achieves. Every limitation becomes opportunity for unprecedented partnership development. The cartel's next innovation emerged from studying how this pattern of disability-driven evolution was reshaping military capabilities globally. Special Forces units were discovering that adapted techniques consistently outperformed conventional methods in certain scenarios. These developments are extraordinary, Colonel Santiago noted, reviewing international training data. Disability repeatedly forces innovation beyond normal parameters. Each adaptation becomes foundation for enhancing human capability in ways we never imagined possible. Torres detected this shifting perspective during their evening security sweep. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to view disability not as limitation, but as gateway to unprecedented tactical evolution. Most people see injury as end of combat effectiveness, Torres told visiting military observers. They don't understand that it often becomes catalyst for developing capabilities exceeding normal human parameters. Every limitation forces innovation that transforms our understanding of possible. In Mexico City, Ramirez studied this emerging pattern with growing comprehension. "We're facing something bigger than adaptation," he told his war council. "These disability-driven innovations are consistently producing capabilities beyond conventional human limits. We're not witnessing compensation, we're seeing evolution of warfare itself." The cartel's next phase revealed this understanding. Instead of trying to counter specific adaptations, they began studying how disability-driven innovation was revolutionizing combat tactics globally. Each engagement became opportunity to comprehend this broader transformation of military capability. A breakthrough occurred during an attempted operation. When cartel teams deployed conventional tactics, they found themselves facing integrated response, incorporating disability-adapted techniques that transcended normal combat parameters. 10 hostiles neutralized, Torres reported afterward. They're finally understanding the bigger picture. We're not just developing personal adaptations, we're pioneering capabilities that enhance human performance beyond conventional limits. Every disability becomes gateway to tactical evolution. Deputy Director Chen witnessed this transformation during a sophisticated multi-unit exercise. When standard operations faced adapted techniques, the disability-driven innovations consistently demonstrated superiority in certain scenarios. These evolved capabilities were reshaping understanding of human potential. Your brother's impact extends beyond individual adaptation, Chen told Miguel. He's helping demonstrate how disability consistently drives innovation exceeding normal human parameters. These developments are becoming foundation for enhancing military capability globally. Torres sensed this shift in perspective during their morning patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to recognize disability as catalyst for unprecedented evolution of human capability. "Good," he told the dog quietly. "Maybe now they're ready to understand the real transformation." The German shepherd's ears pricked forward, their partnership demonstrating perfect integration of enhanced capabilities. "Which is?" Miguel asked during a joint forces briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over his tactical displays. "That disability doesn't just force personal adaptation, it consistently drives innovation beyond conventional human parameters. Every limitation becomes opportunity for enhancing capability in ways we never imagined possible." The cartel forces regrouped, studying international training data with newfound insight. They had tried to exploit disabilities, only to discover themselves facing evolution of combat capability they couldn't predict or counter. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the principle that would elude their enemies until too late. That true combat evolution isn't just about overcoming personal limitations, but about using them as catalyst for enhancing human capability beyond conventional parameters. Each attempt to exploit their disabilities just gave them new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful innovations aren't those that maximize existing capabilities, but those that use limitation as foundation for achieving unprecedented evolution in human potential. Xavier Ramirez's understanding underwent a profound transformation when he discovered something unexpected in global military research. Combat units integrating disabled veterans weren't just adopting their techniques, they were experiencing accelerated evolution in human performance capabilities. This goes beyond tactical adaptation, Colonel Santiago explained to his strategic council. When these veterans transform limitation into innovation, they consistently unlock human potential we never knew existed. It's like disability removes conventional barriers to evolution. At a classified military symposium in Virginia, Torres presented findings that shocked traditional combat theorists. His work with other disabled veterans had revealed patterns of enhanced human capability that defied conventional understanding. We originally thought disability forced compensation, Torres told the gathered experts. Instead, we're discovering it often removes ingrained limitations in human performance. When conventional options disappear, the mind and body find ways to exceed normal parameters. A team of neuroscientists studying disabled veterans' adaptations found remarkable brain plasticity patterns. Injuries weren't just forcing compensation, they were triggering unprecedented neural development and sensory integration. The human brain's response to disability is extraordinary, the lead researcher shared. Rather than simply rerouting lost functions, it often develops entirely new capabilities. It's as if limitation becomes catalyst for expanding human potential. In San Antonio, Shadow demonstrated this principle during an international K9 training summit. The German Shepherd's evolved partnership with Torres had created new understanding of human-animal neural synchronization beyond traditional parameters. Most research focused on how service animals assist disabled handlers, Torres explained to visiting military K9 units. We're discovering something different. Disability often forces evolution of human-animal neural integration exceeding normal biological limits. Every limitation becomes opportunity for unprecedented partnership development. The DEA Command Center tracked how this emerging understanding was transforming military capability globally. Units incorporating disabled veterans' innovations consistently demonstrated enhanced human performance beyond conventional parameters. Your brother helped pioneer something revolutionary, Deputy Director Chen told Miguel. These adaptations aren't just overcoming disability, they're expanding our understanding of human potential. Each innovation reveals capabilities we never knew were possible. Torres sensed this shifting perspective during a classified defense briefing. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to view disability as gateway to accelerated human performance evolution. Traditional training maximizes existing capabilities, Torres explained to senior military leaders. Disability forces exploration beyond conventional limits. When normal options disappear, human potential finds ways to exceed standard parameters. In Mexico City, Ramirez studied emerging research with growing comprehension. We're witnessing more than adaptation, he told his advisors. These disability-driven innovations consistently unlock human capabilities beyond normal limits. We're seeing accelerated evolution of human potential. A breakthrough came during analysis of combat neural mapping. When disabled veterans engaged their adapted capabilities, brain activity patterns revealed development of neural pathways previously unknown in human performance. 12 hostile elements neutralized, Torres reported after an engagement. They're starting to understand the deeper transformation. We're not just developing new techniques, we're expanding human capability beyond conventional limits. Every disability becomes catalyst for evolutionary potential. Deputy Director Chen witnessed this principle during classified performance trials. When standard operators faced disability-adapted techniques, the enhanced capabilities consistently demonstrated superiority in expanding human performance parameters. Your brother's impact transcends combat innovation, Chen told Miguel. He's helping reveal how disability often unlocks human potential beyond normal limits. These discoveries are reshaping our understanding of human capability. Torres detected this evolution in perspective during their evening patrol. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to recognize disability as catalyst for accelerated human performance development. Good, he told the dog quietly. Maybe now they're ready to understand the real transformation. The German shepherd's ears pricked forward, their partnership demonstrating neural synchronization beyond conventional parameters. Which is? Miguel asked during a classified briefing. Torres smiled, fingers moving over tactical displays. That disability doesn't just force adaptation. It often removes barriers to human potential we never knew existed. Every limitation becomes opportunity for expanding capability beyond conventional understanding. The cartel forces regrouped, studying emerging research with newfound insight. They had tried to exploit disabilities, only to face expansion of human capability. They couldn't predict or counter. Their next approach would be different, but they still didn't grasp the fundamental truth. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the principle that would elude their enemies until too late. That true human evolution isn't just about overcoming limitations, but about using them as catalyst for unlocking potential beyond conventional parameters. Each attempt to exploit their disabilities just gave them new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful innovations aren't those that maximize existing capabilities, but those that use limitation as gateway to expanding human potential in ways we never imagined possible. A classified Pentagon study revealed patterns that transformed military understanding. Combat units integrating disabled veterans' innovations showed consistent enhancement in human performance capabilities. Beyond normal parameters, these findings redefine human potential, a senior military scientist noted. When disability forces innovation beyond conventional limits, it often unlocks capabilities we never knew existed. Each limitation becomes catalyst for expanding human performance parameters. Torres sensed this deepening comprehension during an international defense summit. Shadow's behavior confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to view disability as gateway to accelerated evolution in human capability. Most research focused on compensating for limitation, Torres explained to gathered experts. We're discovering something profound. Disability often removes conventional barriers to human potential. When normal options disappear, capability finds ways to exceed standard parameters. The cartel's next phase revealed this understanding. Instead of trying to counter specific adaptations, they began studying how disability-driven innovation was consistently expanding boundaries of human performance. Each engagement became opportunity to comprehend this broader transformation in human capability. A breakthrough occurred during neural mapping of combat engagement. When cartel teams faced disability-adapted techniques, brain activity patterns revealed development of unprecedented human performance capabilities. "They're finally seeing the bigger picture," Torres told his brother afterward. "We're not just overcoming limitations, we're expanding understanding of human potential. Every disability becomes opportunity for unlocking capabilities beyond conventional parameters, because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the truth that would transform military capability. That true human evolution isn't just about compensating for limitations, but about using them as catalyst for unlocking potential beyond conventional understanding. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that overcome disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to expanding human capability in ways we never imagined possible. Xavier Ramirez faced a critical decision as he reviewed the latest findings. His intelligence teams had uncovered something extraordinary in classified military research. Combat units integrating disabled veterans weren't just adopting new tactics, they were achieving breakthroughs in human cognitive evolution. "The implications are staggering," Colonel Santiago explained to his strategic council. "These veterans aren't just adapting to disability, they're pioneering ways of processing information and responding to threats that transcend normal human cognitive limits." At a classified neurological research facility, scientists studying Torres and other disabled veterans made a groundbreaking discovery. The brain's response to disability wasn't just compensating for lost function, it was developing entirely new neural architectures for processing sensory information and tactical response. Traditional neuroscience focused on how the brain reroutes around damage, the lead researcher explained. What we're seeing instead is the emergence of completely novel neural networks. These veterans aren't just rewiring existing pathways, they're developing new ones we never knew were possible. In San Antonio, Torres demonstrated this principle during a classified military assessment. While conventional operators processed tactical information through standard sensory channels, his adapted neural networks integrated data in ways that defied traditional understanding. Most people think losing a sense like vision simply forces reliance on other senses, Torres explained to the observation team. The reality is more profound. The brain doesn't just compensate, it evolves new ways of processing information that can exceed normal human parameters. Shadow's role in this cognitive evolution proved especially significant. The German Shepard's neural synchronization with Torres had developed beyond standard human-animal partnership into something that challenged fundamental understanding of interspecies communication. The traditional model of handler and service animal is far too limited, Torres shared during a classified briefing. What we're discovering is the potential for levels of human-animal neural integration that transcend conventional biological barriers. The DEA Command Center tracked how this emerging understanding was transforming special operations capability. Units incorporating disabled veterans' cognitive innovations demonstrated tactical awareness and response times exceeding normal human limits. A breakthrough came during a sophisticated cartel probe. When their operators encountered Torres' evolved combat responses, neural mapping revealed patterns of information processing that defied conventional tactical parameters. 14 hostile elements neutralized, Torres reported afterward. They still don't understand what they're facing. This isn't about compensating for blindness. It's about evolving beyond normal human cognitive limitations. Deputy Director Chen witnessed this evolution during classified performance trials. When standard operators faced disability-adapted responses, the enhanced cognitive capabilities consistently demonstrated superiority in processing tactical information. Your brother's impact goes beyond combat innovation, Chen told Miguel. He's helping reveal how disability can drive evolution of human cognitive potential beyond normal parameters. These discoveries are transforming our understanding of human capability. Torres detected this shift in perspective during their evening security sweep. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to recognize disability as catalyst for accelerated evolution of human cognitive potential. Most people see injury as limiting human capability, Torres explained to visiting defense scientists. They don't understand that it often forces development of cognitive processes exceeding normal parameters. When conventional options disappear, the human brain finds ways to transcend standard limitations. The cartel's next phase revealed this understanding. Instead of targeting specific adaptations, they began studying how disability-driven innovation was consistently expanding boundaries of human cognitive performance. Each engagement became opportunity to comprehend this broader transformation. A classified Pentagon study revealed patterns that revolutionized military doctrine. Combat units integrating disabled veterans' innovations showed consistent enhancement in tactical processing capabilities beyond normal parameters. These findings redefine human potential, a senior military scientist noted. When disability forces innovation beyond conventional limits, it often unlocks cognitive capabilities we never knew existed. Each limitation becomes catalyst for expanding human performance parameters. Torres sensed this deepening comprehension during their morning patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to view disability as gateway to accelerated evolution in human cognitive capability. The transformation goes deeper than tactics, Torres told his brother during a secure briefing. We're discovering how disability can drive evolution of human potential beyond conventional limits. Every limitation becomes opportunity for expanding capability in ways we never imagined possible. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the truth that would transform military capability, that true human evolution isn't just about compensating for limitations, but about using them as catalyst for unlocking cognitive potential beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that overcome disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to expanding human capability in ways that redefine what's possible. The cartel's next attempt revealed their growing desperation. Unable to counter Torres' evolved capabilities through conventional means, they launched a coordinated effort to overwhelm his enhanced cognitive processes through sensory overload. They still don't understand, Torres noted as Shadow alerted him to the approaching threat. "You can't overload systems that already operate beyond normal sensory parameters. Every attempt just gives us more data to process in new ways." The engagement that followed demonstrated this truth with devastating clarity. When Cartel teams deployed sophisticated sensory warfare systems, they found themselves facing cognitive responses that transcended normal human limitations. "Final count, 16 hostiles neutralized," Torres reported afterward. "They're learning, but still haven't grasped the fundamental principle. This isn't about compensating for lost capability. It's about evolving beyond conventional human limits." Because Michael Torres and Shadow had mastered the truth that would elude their enemies until too late, that true human evolution isn't just about overcoming limitations, but about using them as foundation for developing capabilities beyond conventional understanding. Each attempt to exploit their disabilities just gave them new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful innovations come not from maximizing existing potential, but from using limitation as catalyst for expanding human capability beyond what we thought possible. In the aftermath, Torres knelt beside Shadow, their neural synchronization demonstrating levels of human-animal integration that defied conventional understanding. "They're starting to see it, boy," he said quietly. "Starting to understand that what they thought was our weakness is actually the source of evolution they can't predict or counter." The German Shepherd's response wasn't just that of a service animal or military canine. It demonstrated partnership that transcended normal biological parameters. Together, they had pioneered capabilities that would reshape understanding of human potential, because they had mastered the principle that would transform military capability, that true evolution comes not from overcoming limitation, but from using it as catalyst for expanding human potential beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that compensate for disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. Xavier Ramirez gathered his elite council for what would be their final strategic session. The latest classified research had revealed something that transformed their entire understanding of human capability. Torres and other disabled veterans weren't just developing enhanced abilities, they were pioneering a new stage of human evolution. "The data is undeniable," Colonel Santiago addressed the assembled Cartel leadership. "These adaptations aren't just compensation, they represent emergence of capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Each limitation forces expansion of potential we never knew existed." In a classified defense facility, researchers studying Torres' neural patterns made a revolutionary discovery. His brain hadn't just rewired around blindness, it had developed entirely new architectures for processing reality that transcended conventional human consciousness. "We're witnessing emergence of new human potential," the chief scientist explained. "When disability removes standard options, the brain doesn't just adapt. It evolves new ways of experiencing and interacting with reality. Each limitation becomes gateway to capabilities beyond normal parameters." Shadow's partnership with Torres demonstrated this principle during an advanced combat trial. The German Shepherd's neural synchronization with his handler had evolved beyond standard biological limitations into something that challenged fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. Most assume service animals simply assist disabled handlers. Torres explained to gathered military observers. What we're discovering is potential for human-animal neural integration that transcends conventional biology. When disability forces evolution beyond normal parameters, it opens pathways to capabilities we never imagined possible. A breakthrough came during analysis of Torres' tactical responses. His processing of combat information didn't just compensate for blindness. It operated through entirely new cognitive frameworks that exceeded normal human capability. Traditional combat relies on standard sensory processing, Torres shared. During a classified briefing, what disability forced me to develop was something different, ways of experiencing and responding to reality that go beyond conventional human parameters. The DEA Command Center tracked how this understanding was transforming special operations globally. Units incorporating disabled veterans' evolved capabilities demonstrated levels of performance that redefined human potential. Your brothers' discoveries go beyond tactics, Deputy Director Chen told Miguel. He's revealing how disability can drive emergence of human capabilities exceeding normal limits. These adaptations are reshaping our understanding of human potential. Torres sensed this deepening comprehension during their evening patrol. Shadow's reactions confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to recognize disability as catalyst for accelerated human evolution. The transformation is more fundamental than technique, Torres explained to visiting defense scientists. We're discovering how disability can force development of capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Each limitation becomes opportunity for expanding human potential in unprecedented ways. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered the truth that would transform understanding of human capability, that true evolution isn't just about compensating for limitations, but about using them as catalyst for expanding human potential beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that overcome disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. The cartel's final assault came with desperate intensity. Unable to counter Torres's evolved capabilities through conventional means, they launched an all-out effort to overwhelm his enhanced response systems. They still don't understand, Torres noted, as Shadow alerted him to approaching threats. You can't overwhelm capabilities that already operate beyond normal parameters. Every attempt just expands our potential further. The engagement that followed demonstrated this truth with devastating clarity. When cartel teams deployed their most sophisticated combat systems, they found themselves facing responses that transcended normal human limitations. Final count, 20 hostiles neutralized, Torres reported afterward. They never grasped the fundamental principle. This isn't about compensating for lost capability. It's about evolving beyond conventional human limits. Because Michael, Torres and Shadow had mastered the truth that would elude their enemies until too late. The true human evolution isn't just about overcoming limitations, but about using them as foundation for developing capabilities beyond conventional understanding. Each attempt to exploit their disabilities just gave them new opportunities to demonstrate that the most powerful innovations come not from maximizing existing potential, but from using limitation as catalyst for expanding human capability beyond what we thought possible. In Mexico City, Ramirez received the operation reports with dawning comprehension. His forces, the cartel's most elite operators, had been systematically dismantled by capabilities they couldn't predict or counter. "We never understood what we were really facing," he told his remaining council. "We saw disability as weakness, to exploit. Instead, it was source of evolution beyond anything we could comprehend." The cartel's defeat wasn't just tactical, it was transformative. They had tried to overcome what they saw as limitation, only to face expansion of human capability beyond conventional parameters. In the aftermath, Torres knelt beside Shadow, their neural synchronization demonstrating levels of human-animal integration that redefined biological possibility. "They finally understand, boy," he said quietly, "finally grasped that what they thought was our weakness was actually catalyst for evolution they couldn't predict or counter, because they had mastered the principle that would transform understanding of human potential, that true evolution comes not from overcoming limitation, but from using it as foundation for expanding capability beyond conventional parameters." Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that compensate for disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. The legacy of their victory went far beyond defeating one cartel. Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had demonstrated truths that would reshape understanding of human potential, that limitation isn't barrier to capability, but catalyst for evolution beyond conventional parameters. Their achievements proved that the most profound innovations come not from maximizing existing capability, but from using restriction as gateway to expanding human potential in ways we never imagined possible. In the DEA Command Center, Deputy Director Chen studied the final operation reports with profound respect. "Your brother didn't just defeat a cartel," she told Miguel. "He helped reveal how disability can drive evolution of human capability beyond normal limits. These discoveries will transform our understanding of human potential." Because Michael Torres and Shadow had mastered truth that would reshape military capability, that profound evolution comes not from overcoming limitation, but from using it as catalyst for expanding human potential beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that compensate for disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. Their victory marked beginning of new understanding. That true strength comes not from maximizing existing capability, but from using limitation as foundation for evolving beyond conventional parameters. The most profound innovations emerge not from overcoming restriction, but from using it as catalyst for expanding human potential in ways that transform our understanding of what's possible. In the aftermath of their final confrontation, the impact of Torres and Shadow's victory rippled far beyond the defeat of one cartel. Their triumph had demonstrated profound truths about human potential that would reshape understanding of disability and evolution. At an international military symposium, Torres addressed gathered representatives from special forces units worldwide. Shadow sat alert beside him, their partnership embodying principles that transcended conventional understanding. "When I first lost my sight, many thought my combat days were over," Torres began. "What they didn't understand was that disability wouldn't be my limitation. It would become catalyst for evolution beyond normal human parameters." The gathered operators listened intently as Torres shared deeper insights from their journey. The cartel saw my blindness as weakness to exploit. Instead, it forced development of capabilities they couldn't predict or counter. Each limitation became foundation for expanding human potential in ways we never imagined possible. A year after their victory, research continued to reveal extraordinary patterns. Combat units incorporating disabled veterans' innovations demonstrated consistent enhancement in human performance capabilities beyond conventional limits. The transformation goes deeper than tactics, Torres explained to visiting defense scientists. When disability removes standard options, it forces exploration of potential we never knew existed. Every limitation becomes opportunity for expanding human capability in unprecedented ways. Shadow's evolution proved especially significant. The German Shepherd's partnership with Torres had developed beyond normal service animal or military canine parameters into something that challenged fundamental understanding of human-animal neural integration. Most assume guide dogs simply help disabled handlers navigate, Torres shared during an international canine training summit. What we discovered was potential for levels of partnership that transcend conventional biology. When disability forces evolution beyond normal parameters, it opens pathways to capabilities we never imagined possible. In the DEA's advanced training facility, Torres worked with a new generation of disabled veterans, helping them understand deeper truths about adaptation and potential. Society often sees disability as something to overcome, he explained to his students. We're discovering it can be a catalyst for developing capabilities beyond normal human limits. Each limitation becomes opportunity for expanding potential in ways that redefine what's possible. A former Navy SEAL who lost both legs demonstrated this principle during advanced combat trials. His adapted movement patterns didn't just compensate for injury. They had evolved into entirely new forms of tactical mobility that able-bodied operators couldn't replicate. Before my injury, I moved like every other operator, the SEAL shared. Now I've developed techniques that give me advantages in certain situations. What seemed like limitation became gateway to capabilities beyond normal parameters. Deputy Director Chen witnessed this evolution during classified performance assessments. When standard operators faced disability-adapted techniques, the enhanced capabilities consistently demonstrated superiority in expanding human performance parameters. Torres and his fellow veterans haven't just overcome disability, Chen remarked. They've helped reveal how limitation can drive evolution of human potential beyond conventional limits. These discoveries are transforming our understanding of what's possible. The impact extended far beyond military applications. Rehabilitation centers worldwide began incorporating principles derived from Torres's innovations, helping disabled civilians discover how limitation could become foundation for unprecedented capability. Traditional therapy focuses on compensating for lost function, a leading rehabilitation specialist explained. What we're learning from these veterans is that disability can force development of capabilities exceeding normal parameters. Each limitation becomes opportunity for expanding human potential in ways we never imagined. In San Antonio, Torres continued training with Shadow, their partnership demonstrating ever-deepening levels of neural synchronization. To observers, They appeared to be simply practicing guide dog protocols. In reality, they were pioneering new frontiers in human-animal capability. Most people see service animals as assistants, helping disabled handlers cope, Torres explained during a demonstration. We're discovering something more profound: how disability can force evolution of human-animal partnership beyond conventional parameters. Every limitation becomes catalyst for expanding capability in unprecedented ways. The cartel's defeat had broader implications for understanding human potential. Their attempts to exploit perceived weakness had revealed deeper truths about adaptation and evolution. We never grasped what we were really facing, a captured cartel commander admitted. We saw disability as vulnerability to target. Instead, it was source of capabilities we couldn't predict or counter. Each limitation became foundation for evolution beyond anything we could comprehend. Research continued revealing extraordinary patterns in how disability drove development of enhanced human capability. Combat units integrating disabled veterans' innovations showed consistent improvement in performance beyond normal parameters. These findings reshape our understanding of human potential, a senior military scientist noted. When disability forces innovation beyond conventional limits, it often unlocks capabilities we never knew existed. Each limitation becomes catalyst for expanding human performance in unprecedented ways. Torres sensed this deepening comprehension during their evening patrol. Shadow's subtle signals confirmed his analysis. Military organizations worldwide were beginning to recognize disability, not as restriction to overcome, but as gateway to accelerated evolution of human capability. The transformation goes beyond compensation, Torres explained during a classified briefing. We're discovering how disability can drive development of potential exceeding normal human parameters. Every limitation becomes opportunity for expanding capability in ways we never imagined possible. Because Michael Torres and his fellow disabled veterans had mastered truth that would reshape understanding of human potential. That profound evolution comes not from overcoming limitation, but from using it as catalyst for expanding capability beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that compensate for disability, but those that use limitation as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. Their legacy continued growing as new generations of disabled veterans discovered how limitation could become foundation for unprecedented evolution. Each innovation proved that the most profound human capabilities emerge not from maximizing existing potential, but from using restriction as catalyst for expanding possibility beyond conventional parameters. In the quiet moments, Torres reflected on their journey with Shadow pressed against his leg. "We showed them something important, boy," he said softly. "Showed them that what seems like weakness can become source of strength they never imagined possible. Every limitation just gives us new ways to evolve beyond normal boundaries." Because they had mastered principle that would transform understanding of human capability, that true evolution comes not from overcoming disability, but from using it as foundation for expanding potential beyond conventional parameters. Each innovation proved that the most powerful adaptations aren't those that compensate for limitation, but those that use restriction as gateway to developing capabilities that redefine what's possible. Their victory marked beginning of new understanding about human potential, That profound strength emerges not from maximizing existing capability, but from using limitation as catalyst for evolution beyond conventional parameters. They had demonstrated that the most extraordinary innovations come not from overcoming restriction, but from using it as foundation for expanding human potential in ways that transform our understanding of what's possible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.